Okay, Kenneth, if we could have them go ahead and roll the tape, please. If everybody would address their attention to the infield board. You too.
What's that? That's one of my favorite pictures. That was not posed, by the way. That was just taken by a snapshot, and I have that in my office. That's a young Gary Stevens there. That's an old Gary Stevens there.
You're so bad.
That's an old Wayne Lukas there.
Will take charge, takes off on the far outside. He now shifts in just a bit. Carr is going with him. Between those two, it's right to Momo. Will take charge, starts to assert himself late. And it's a confident Will take charge, handwritten to score by a length in the Oaklawn handicap.
I love that picture.
Never get tired of seeing that stuff.
Now, I don't know if many of you know this, but Wayne is extremely an educated man, master's degree in education, actually, at the University of Wisconsin. Go Badgers. You might have actually heard people reference him as coach, and there's a reason for that. He was a head high school basketball coach for 9 years and a teacher in Wisconsin. Do you ever miss those days after transitioning from coaching and teaching?
I miss the camaraderie. I miss the camaraderie of the coaches. This is an exciting time of the year with the NCAA tournament on too, but I got to the crossroads. I was an assistant at the University of Wisconsin, and there goes one of the good ones. I was an assistant at the University of Wisconsin under a coach named Johnny Orr and Johnny Erickson. And 2 years after I made the decision to go with the training, actually the quarter horses at that time, I was offered the Michigan job. And I was good friends with Bo Schembechler up there, the Michigan coach, and I turned that down. And some days when the horses are slow, I miss that a little bit maybe, but on most days I think I made the right decision.
So by 1972, after he went into training, he was actually a quarter horse trainer. I know a lot of our new thoroughbred fans don't realize that quarter horse training was your first love. Averaged $1 million in purse earnings back in the early 70s. That was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, that was a record at that time.
Before switching to thoroughbreds full-time in the late 70s, 23 quarter horse champions. Now, why the transition to thoroughbreds, Wayne?
Well, we were really doing well. When they went to year-round quarter horse racing in California, we went out there. And then my son Jeff thought that we should change over to the thoroughbreds. And he kept saying, Dad, we can beat him at Santa Anita just as easy as we're beating him at Los Alamitos, which is the leading quarter horse track. But we had such an edge in the quarter horses, like you indicated there, we had champion after champion, and I thought, boy, why would we mess up something that's this good? But Jeff kept pushing. He said, we can go to Santa Anita and beat him too. So I said, well, okay, let's take 4 head and go over there and test the water a little bit. And we started out with 4 head, and 6 months later we had 25, and next thing you know, we had a full barn and things got good.
Well, good is an understatement because we'll just say they worked out.
It worked out very good.
We'll just say they worked out. Right now, Wayne is 8th on the all-time thoroughbred leader by wins at 4,800, 3rd on the all-time thoroughbred list for earnings, $277.8 million.
I don't know where the hell that went.
That's every trainer's response. I don't know where it went. So
I think those divorces got most of it.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, we won't go there. Lori's here. We won't go there. Entered the Hall of Fame in '99. 5 Eclipse Awards for Outstanding Trainer. That's just to be recognized by your peers. That has to be a huge accomplishment. Were any of those just like really standout moments?
I think they were really important at that time and very gratifying and humbling. But a year or two later, I got the Eclipse of Merit, and I think that one stands out the most to me. I mean, that's recognized by your peers for not winning races and maybe doing some of the stuff we do out here, but some of the other stuff, like putting up with you.
I resemble that remark, Wayne. He's also saddled more Breeders' Cup winners than anyone else with 20. Now, the closest person to him is Baffert with 14. So what is it about just win after win after win? I know it's good horses, but I mean, to come from a quarter horse base to transition so fluidly into thoroughbreds?
Well, on the Breeders' Cup, we put the emphasis on it. When it first came around, I said to my son Jeff, this is going to get bigger than they think. It was kind of, well, this is going to be a championship series, and nobody got too hyped about it. But I told Jeff, I said, this thing is going to get really big. We need to start pointing horses for it and put the emphasis on it, because this is going to be like the Triple Crown. People are going to really get into this. And consequently, we started winning those races. And of course, Baffert's on my heels now with 14, and he's young. He'll probably pass us, but that whole run, I think, was really, really significant in us getting a lot of happy clientele.
He mentioned 4 Kentucky Derbies, and one of those included winning colors in 1988. She's only just one of 3 fillies in the 143 runnings of the Kentucky Derby. Now, you're also one of the only trainer to saddle a filly to win the Arkansas Derby with Althea that we saw in 1984. Do people just think you're just absolutely crazy running a filly? Because that's still fairly early in the 3-year-old season to send a filly out against the boys. Tell us about your reasoning.
Well, I think that I could have been committed for that one. Here's what happened. I brought the Fantasy, which is the 3-year-old filly race, was then a week before the Arkansas Derby. They were just a week apart. Now I think they're 2 weeks apart. But so we bring Althea in here. She's a super good filly. She stumbles out of the gate in the Fantasy and runs second. So I just got the one filly. So I'm sitting over at the barn that week. Monday goes by, Tuesday goes by, and she's standing at the stall jumping up and down and squealing. And I thought, wow, she came out of that awfully well. And I thought, it's amazing how good she's doing. Now Wednesday comes up, and it's entry day, and I thought, hell, I'll just go back over there and enter her. So I entered her, and she's the only filly to ever win the Arkansas Derby. I mean, she run really well.
So just because she was squealing and feeling good.
Yeah, she felt good. I mean,
just
run
for the
them
hell of it.
Run them when they're doing good and turn them out when they're not. It's very simple. This is not putting people on the moon here.
It's not, okay. It's not, you're right, it's not rocket science. Wayne is also the first trainer to hit $100 million in earnings, and also the only thoroughbred trainer in the Hall of Fame, in the Thoroughbred Trainer Hall of Fame, to be inducted into the Quarter Horse Hall of Fame. Baffert hasn't done that.
No, I'm really proud of that. That I think was it's this thing. Yeah, that thing was getting into both of those Hall of Fames was pretty significant, and I really enjoyed that. I love the quarter horses yet. My heart goes on. My wife is a a former when I married her, she quit this, but she was a judge for 22 years, a world-class judge in the quarter horse business. So we still dabble a little bit in that, but it's really fun.
One thing that I love is you can always find Wayne on his pony in the morning and your lovely wife Lori right alongside you. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, she wants to sleep in, but I make her come out.
I'm sure you don't have to kick her out of bed. Now, one thing that I love about part of Wayne's history is that much like Jack Van Berg, some big now names came up under Wayne. His proteges include Bobby Barnett, Todd Pletcher, who won 2 Kentucky Derbies, Karen McLaughlin, Dallas Stewart, George Weaver, Mark Hennig, Mike Maker, Randy Bradshaw. Now, amongst those, they've amassed 12,000 wins and $710.5 million in earnings.
And we also got Wilby Van Meter, who's...
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Local trainer Will Van Meter is the most recent to leave the nest.
Right.
So
right.
Are you getting a percentage of those earnings at all? Like 0.5, something along those lines?
Here's how that works. It's like family. Todd Pletcher comes over with a stakes horse or 2 every year. So they go into my barn, they use my straw, my hay, my grain, my hot walker, my ice machine, and then they beat up on us out there in the track, and then they leave.
Do they send a blank check?
Yeah, they just say, hey, great coach, thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Well, when Baffert came in, I believe it was the Smarty Jones with Marino, who has since suffered an ill-fated injury. You saddled, and
I had him for 10 days.
Well, there you go. It was your winning touch. And I believe one of the quotes that he gave was, "I never thought I'd have Lukas as an assistant."
What he said, I was coming down the steps there after I'd saddled him. Baffert wasn't here, just one Spanish groom, and the phone rang, and I normally don't answer it, but I thought, boy, I better answer it. So I looked at it, and it was Baffert. So I answered it, and before I could say anything, he said, "Who'd have thought 37 years ago that Donald Trump would be president and Wayne Lukas would be my assistant?"
I think that actually made the press at some point as well. So with that amazing group that you have brought up, is there anything in particular that by the time they leave and go out on their own that you want them to take with them?
Well, I think one of the things is this profession we're in is so tradition bound that nobody teaches. You can get together with trainers and they won't share anything at all. Now, if you're a basketball coach or a football coach, you can go to a clinic and Nick Saban will diagram everything that he does and share it with every coach in America. But thoroughbred trainers do not share anything. I guess it's the money, the competition, or what. So when those guys came along, most of them, I think the least anyone stayed was 7 years, and I think Dallas Stewart was maybe 14 years, Todd was 12, but we insisted that they learn. We taught all the time, and I think that comes from my teaching background and maybe coaching background, but I always kept explaining why we do things, and I think that made a difference.
So when those guys really got the success, would they ever call you with questions? Because would they stay with you a long time? I'm sure
They call, yeah. Karen McLaughlin will call up and say, you know, Coach, this horse is really screwing up in the gate. He's acting a little bit rank and everything. He doesn't want to turn and walk in quietly, blah, blah, blah. I'll say, okay, here's what you need to do. But they call, as they get out of the nest a little further and they're more successful, they call less. But I have a really good working relationship with all of them. They're almost all of them like family. What we do at the Belmont the last few years is most of them are all there. So at the Belmont, we go over to Todd's house, and we all get together at his house and have dinner. They ought to record that and put it on television because it is hilarious. They get to telling stories about how they, covered for each other's ass, and when they really screwed up, they'll say, "Boy, one time I did this, and Todd called me and said we won't let him know." And
Are you like Marlon Brando in The Godfather and sitting at the head of the table?
Yeah, you bet. I laugh at them. They're hilarious at that dinner.
So, since they kind of call you and depend on you for certain things, when you broke out into thoroughbreds, was there anybody that you called and asked questions to?
I never worked for anybody. I never had
waited.
A lot of these young trainers come up under, like Chad Brown, for example, who's very successful, come up under Bobby Frankel. I never worked for anybody. I started out with a pony, and I taught him to lay down and bow and do all that stuff, and then I got a little further down the base path and I started working the sales. But I never really worked for anybody. I will say this, I really watched some of the great ones, Charlie Whittingham, Laz Barrera out in California, Bob Wheeler, all Hall of Famers. I watched carefully what they were doing. I didn't agree with a lot what they were doing, but I took what I liked about what they were doing and made my own decisions on my horses.
Now, what was the decision to leave California? Because that's kind of where was your base.
California racing is terrific, and Santa Anita is still one of my favorite tracks, but the workman's comp started creeping up to the point where it was really hard on us, all trainers. Now they got it down where they've got a pool and they've got taken care of that, but it was creeping up. But the real reason was, I thought that if racing started to suffer, and I was a little bit concerned, I was good friends with Marge Everett at Hollywood Park, I thought that Hollywood Park days were numbered, which it were. I thought Santa Anita even was a little shaky, and I thought that maybe if racing went to hell, the last two places in America that's going to go to hell would be Kentucky and Oaklawn Park. That was one of my decisions. So I moved to Kentucky and started running here, Kentucky, complete circuit, and then we slip up to Saratoga in August and then back and back. So that was my big decision.
Wayne's a very giving person and just made one of the biggest contributions ever, I'm going to say, to racing industry recently with a donation to almost his entire personal collection of racing memorabilia to the Kentucky Derby Museum. The 4 Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks trophies, Breeders' Cup trophies, a painting of winning colors, a bronze sculpture of Serena's song, multiple Eclipse awards, photos from quarter horse and thoroughbred training career. Was that hard to part with?
Well, there's 2,700 pieces.
Where was all
this?
Yeah,
they're building a new wing on the Derby Museum.
Now, if they had to build a wing for it, where was all this?
This was, I had a large house there in Louisville, which I recently sold. But the whole basement, we started out, and it's quite large, and all of that stuff was either in the great room upstairs or in the basement. 43 feet of just solid wall trophies. I say that humbly, but that's exactly what happened. Now here's the deal. Lori and I decided that the house was too big. So the real problem was how in the hell we're going to pack all that up. So if you give it to the Derby Museum, they come in and pack it all up and leave it. So we went to Saratoga to the races. They took 6 weeks to pack that all up. And it's going to be on display in a special wing there, which we're very proud of. But we gave them all everything. They took it off the walls. I mean, it was amazing.
Well, they probably came in the dead of night and were just ready to get out of there. Did you keep anything?
Not really.
Did you give anything to the grandkids?
I thought about keeping some stuff, but when I got back, there wasn't anything. They wiped it out.
No nails on the walls, no nothing.
No, they did a hell of a job.
Did you give anything to your former assistants, the grandkids, anything?
Nope.
Nothing.
Brady, my grandson, who's a graduate of the Air Force Academy and is now, believe it or not, he's Jeff's only, that's my only grandson. I have a granddaughter and a grandson. That's our entire family. And he is now, after graduating from the Air Force Academy, got his career going pretty good. He's mission coordinator for Air Force One. So he, every time Trump flies around, he sets it up and all the fighter escorts and where they land and all that. That's his job.
Did Brady get anything? Did he want anything?
Brady's got two bronzes he really wants that were his dad's favorite.
Does he have to go back to the Kentucky Derby Museum and sneak them out in his coat?
No, I hung on to those.
Okay.
I got them hid out over here.
Is the Kentucky Derby Museum, did they do inventory and they're going to come in the dead of night?
I think having it in the, I really feel good about having it there. I mean, it was in the basement. We had a party every year. Lori insisted on a party every Thursday before the Derby, and we'd have 100 of our closest friends. And but now, hell, everybody can see it. It's a pretty good collection. By the way, there's a book coming out.
How many books have you done?
None.
None?
None. I don't want to write a book.
Is there one? It's one being written about you.
No. There was one written about me, and it's so bad that it soured me on the whole process. There were so many mistakes in it. The guy, he just did it. It is unbelievable how bad it is. So that soured me on books. But I got one coming out. I might as well throw the commercial out. It is just quotes. My wife, when I would say something some mornings on training or on life or anything, she would jot it down. I didn't realize that. And then one day I looked up and I said, what are all these papers in this folder? And she said, those are your quotes. There were over 200 of them. Aww. So now we got a book coming out in April, and it's just the quotes and explaining the quote. You know, like I say, if people criticize you, live your life in such a manner that nobody will believe them. Or I say, in training horses, never create a situation with a horse that makes you a horse trainer. And then I explain that in one paragraph. But no place in the book are those statistics that you read. I don't want any of that in there. Now get this. Guess what the name of the book is?
Lucasisms.
Sermon on the Mount.
So please tell me there's a picture of you on horseback.
Yes.
Okay.
It is a really good one. I was sitting at Saratoga with my yellow full slicker like the Marlboro old man wore, you know, years ago. And my Australian Shepherd was laying I had taken him up on a hill there and let him run a little bit, and he was laying at the horse's feet, and it's raining, and there's kind of a drizzle, and that's the cover picture.
Sermon, that just kind of writes itself right there.
Pardon?
That kind of writes itself.
What?
It writes itself. Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought we did it. It probably won't inspire too many people. There's some of the quotes in there that my wife questions. I told her they all got to go. Some of them she's said we got to eliminate, but I told her put them all in there. Hell, that's me. So
will you come back next year and have a book signing?
No, I'm not going to have any book signing.
Oh, Wayne.
I mean, if I run into any, you all buy one. Hell, I don't care if you buy it or not. But if you got one, I'll sign it. But I'm not going to sit and sign books. Hell
Okay. So Wayne is obviously training who's who of horses, given all the Breeders' Cup wins, the Derbies, the Preakness, the Belmonts.
See, I don't want any of that in the book. None of that's in the book.
I'm moving on.
None of it.
I'm moving on. I want to know, and this might be a little bit of a trick question, who is the fastest horse that you've trained?
You know, people ask me who's the best one I ever trained. That's tough. But the answer to the fastest one is easy. Landa Lucy. Now, you wouldn't probably remember that, but she was a sensational 2-year-old. Sensational. I mean, she only had 5 outs. She won them all, and she got a blood disorder that attacked all the vital organs in her body, and she died. She actually died right in my lap. But she was so brilliant. She broke her maiden, I think, at Hollywood Park in 1:07, believe it or not. And that's unbelievable time, even for an older horse. And I remember Angel Cordero and I flew on a night flight from New York. And I said, look, I got a beautiful 2-year-old filly I'm going to work in the morning and think she's pretty special. He said, let me work her. I said, we'll go to the hotel. We got in at 6 a.m., sleep a couple hours, and come on out. And I'll hold her for you. So be there about 8:30. So here he comes. Now Cordero fancies himself as really, really smart rider. So he comes out, and I got on my saddle horse, and we're going warming her up, and I said, now I'd like to go in about 49. I said, she's really good, so be careful. He said, I got it, boss, I got it. So he breaks off, breezes her, pulls up on the turn. I go up and catch him with my pony, bring him back, and the clockers were in the small tower there at Hollywood Park. And I said, Angel, what did you go in? He said, boy, boss, she felt really good. I might have went in 48. I said, okay. I said, what did she go in? They said 44 and 2.
His clock was broken.
Yeah, that was almost a track record in the morning.
I was going to say dash for cash.
Well, he's the fastest, but it's only for 400 yards. We can't win when he races it. The horse she's referring to is the best horse I ever trained. He really is. He was a quarter horse named Dash for Cash. He absolutely revolutionized the breed, even after he got through. He was the only horse I ever trained, Nancy, that I never worried about getting him beat. I always just put him in the entry box and said, boys, get in there, you're going to get your ass kicked. I mean, he was really, really that good. And he won every race. He lost a few races before I had him, but he never lost with me. And they had a Champion of Champions race at Los Alamitos where they invite the 10 best horses in the world, going 440 yards. Now, the one hole was so bad at Los Alamitos that guys wouldn't even run in it. They would scratch because they felt like the tractor tires were out a little ways from the rail and packing it, and the harrow made it loose down there. Everybody hated it. They went like something like 80-some races without a horse coming out of the one hole winning. So they draw the Champion of Champions right out of the box. Dash for Cash won.
No.
They started cheering. They said, we got him now. We got him this time. Guess what happened? In a 440-yard race against the best horses in the world, he won by 3.5 lengths and set a world's record that still stands today.
3.5 lengths in quarter horses might as well be 15 in
Yeah, that'd be like
thoroughbreds.
Secretariat's Belmont.
That's insane. So Wayne is obviously notorious for his quarter horses and his thoroughbreds, but he's also notorious for his ponies. There's one particular story that I definitely want you to share. There are 2 pictures in Wayne's office. One of you on one of the most beautiful grays on a horse named For the Moment. There's also a picture of one of the most famous leading men in Hollywood on the same gray in a movie, Pale Rider. How did that come about?
There's a picture of Clint Eastwood on, and then we're both on the same horse, actually. My assistant, Sebastian, found that and copied. They're both even, the horses even stand in the same way. Of course, I'm not as handsome as Clint Eastwood, but we got to do what we got to do. But anyhow, I was riding my pony along at Santa Anita, and a couple of guys came down the rail, and they said, we want to buy this horse. And I said, I said, this horse is not for sale. I didn't know who they were. And they said, well, we'd like to talk to you about it. And I said, no, I don't think he's for sale. They came to the barn, and they said, we're making a movie. and we'd really like to use this horse for Clint Eastwood. Well, that kind of perked me up. So I said, well, I'd love to do it, but I don't think this is a movie horse. I said, he is a little bit skittish in the morning. He's not for everybody to ride. They said, well, Clint's a pretty good rider. And I said, well, I don't know. Now, these guys were the movie wranglers, as they call them. So I didn't sell him, but I made a hell of a lease contract. Now, I didn't realize how long it takes to make a movie. I thought he'd be gone, maybe a month or 2 or 3 months, and we'd get him back. Well, my contract was by the month. Hell, it was a year and a half. The movie is Pale Rider.
Clint Eastwood played Preacher.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie. Now they had the preview at Hollywood. They invited me, of course, and so I went, limoed in there, big dogged it, and went to the movie. And I'm sitting there. I thought, well, this will be interesting to see For the Moment out there on the screen. I could not believe it. He was jumping over ditches. They were throwing dynamite off him. They were shooting people off him and everything. Hell, if he saw a paper on the ground, he would look at it and shy. I could not believe it. So now the movie's over, and I got to know Clint Eastwood a little bit, and he said, I'd really like this horse. And I had made so damn much money on the lease, I sold it to him.
So that was a big win-win for you.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So if you go on IMDb and look up the movie, or look up Clint Eastwood and go to Pale Rider, there's actually that still of Clint Eastwood on For the Moment.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most beautiful grays you will ever see. And that exact picture is one of those that is hanging on Wayne's wall in his office. That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
Now, a big day for you today.
Maybe. Let's hope. Everybody say a little prayer.
Say a little prayer. Say a little prayer. Wayne will saddle the third potential Rebel winner today with Sporting Chance. Now, this horse won the Grade 1 Hopeful as a 2-year-old and had a small knee chip removed after it. He ran a really good third off a near 5-month layoff. He's had 3 good works since. 4 furlongs, a mile, and then a 4 furlong bullet, which means he was the fastest 4 furlong work of that particular morning here at Oaklawn on March 12th. He worked 47 flat. He's got a new pilot today in John Velasquez. Tell us about the jockey change.
Well, Luis Saez had rode him as a 2-year-old, won the Hopeful, and then he rode him in every out, actually, maiden win and everything. He rode a horse for Todd that's in the race today called Magna Moon. And these riders, if you want to really make some money, you go to the jocks room and book all of the riders' bets, because they get the handicapping, and Lewis thinks that Magna Moon is better. We'll find out today. May very well be. I don't know. But he decided to stay with that horse. So Todd's leading rider and guy that really is tied at the hip with Todd is Johnny Velasquez. So I just took Johnny Velasquez. I think this is a good move.
It's funny it's really funny how sometimes karma can work out, right?
Yeah, so Johnny's a Hall of Famer, so I don't think we gave up a lot.
No.
Johnny will ride the horse very well. The horse is doing terrific.
Now, it's interesting because you've got another really spectacular 3-year-old in your barn with Bravazzo, who he won a very solid allowance here and then went down and won the Grade 2 Risen Star at the Fairgrounds 21-1.
That happens all the time.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
I don't know why.
No, it doesn't.
We've had, if you take our 4 Kentucky Derbies and 6 Preaknesses, I think only 2 of them were favorites. The rest of them paid $30, $40.
So you could potentially, if you really want to cut down to brass tacks, have 2 starters on the first Saturday in May.
Boy, I'm hoping. That's what I get up every day and get out there at 82 years old and hope for. I don't know how many more runs there are here. I feel good, but I'd like to get one out of the way.
So Gary Stevens rode him here. Mena rode Bravazzo down at the Fairgrounds. Unfortunately, Mena has a broken ankle now.
Broke his ankle
So
yesterday.
does that mean Gary Stevens is going to get back on Bravazzo?
That's correct. Gary will be back on him.
Because I got something from Jay Fedor to ask that question.
Well,
His
I don't
agent.
know if that's official with the media members, but it is. Gary Stevens is going to ride Bravazzo in the Louisiana Derby. And when this one's over today, we'll find out who's going to ride Sporting Chance.
How bit of a lot of times when you do see, local riders riding Derby preps and then come the big dance, it's a lot of jockey positioning and so forth. How important is it, do you think, to have a bigger name come Derby time?
I think they're all overrated. The only thing is when you get into these bigger races, sometimes that experience factor and having done it, been there, they know how to ride in the limo. That sometimes enter into it. And the other thing that enters into it is the clientele, the owners of these horses, will say, well, wow, we got Johnny Velasquez, or we can get Gary Stevens or Jerry Bailey, and so they right away don't know that we as trainers are trying to make a fit there, the guy that fits the horse the best. So a lot of things go into it. I've ridden a lot of riders that well, here's some interesting things. When Thunder Gulch won the Kentucky Derby, he had won the Fountain of Youth and the Florida Derby, and he ran really poorly in the Bluegrass, which is the last prep before the Kentucky Derby. Now, we don't have a rider for him, so we decide that we'll get Gary Stevens, who had won on Winning Colors. We'd get him back. Experience, been the Derby, had the experience, knew what he was doing. So we call, and what do you think he says? I'm not going to fly halfway around the country to ride that $50,000 claimer. So I said, Mike Smith, who had rode him previously, Mike, call Gary and tell him this horse is really doing well. So Gary reluctantly gets on him. He wins the Kentucky Derbies, third in the Preakness, wins the Belmont, wins the Swaps, wins the Haskell, wins the Travers, all those great ones right in a row. So, that, and then when Grindstone won the Kentucky Derby, Jerry Bailey didn't want to ride him. He wanted to ride another one I had called Prince of Thieves, and he told his agent, if I can't ride Prince of Thieves, I'm not riding the other one. That was only the second time Jerry Bailey, great rider, ever won the Kentucky Derby. He won it on Grindstone.
How unbelievably frustrating is that?
Not at all.
Really?
There's 40 of them in there.
That's true.
Throw a dart, bring one out.
So we've seen speed really hold the last couple of days. How do you see the pace set up for Sporting Chance today?
I think he's got great tactical speed. Everybody in the race will tell you that. We stand in front of the 50 or 60 press members at the Kentucky Derby, and we tell them everything they want to hear. We have tactical speed. We're going to be laying just off the pace when we get to the turn. And then if you go to the next one, he tells them the same thing. Well, there's 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby. They can't all be just off the pace at the turn. So, but I like horses that have tactical speed and a high cruising speed. They get into their stride and start, running, and he has that. You could put a glass of water on his back and watch him go around here, and you wouldn't spill a drop.
Oh, that's awesome.
He really, really is smooth. He's very laid back too, very laid back. But I'm not gonna try to predict what's gonna happen here, because you can overcoach these riders for sure. First of all, the good ones, like the Hall of Famers, they don't listen to you anyhow because they said the hell. And the other ones are so inexperienced they couldn't do it if you asked them to, so what the hell.
A lot of people do come here to Oaklawn, and we've seen, some new faces. What is it that makes Oaklawn so special?
Well, it's the only place in the world where on a Thursday you got a crowd. Racing is now people sitting in their office or at home punching it in on their phone to Express Bet or Twin Spires or whatever. At Oaklawn, you couldn't get this at Belmont Park if you had American Pharoah standing here. Believe me, this has got a tremendous fan base, tremendous. That coupled with, this is probably the premier place to maybe prep a Derby horse, in my opinion. There's a number of reasons. First of all, Pat Pope has done a great job of giving you the Smarty Jones, the Southwest, the Rebel, and the Derby. That's a beautiful sequence there for a horse that's trying to get to the Derby. And then this track is very similar now to Churchill Downs, very similar, not a lot of adjustment. So you take those things and put them there and then add 900,000 today and 1 million next time. It's a pretty damn good place to be.
One of the cool things that Wayne has done is every race that he wins, he grabs, or not grabs, that sounds bad, he takes a child from the stands and takes him down to the winner's circle so he can get his picture taken. When did that tradition start?
About 20 years ago or so, I thought that it would be so easy to just get a small child and take them and give them that experience that so many people, enjoy. So I just go up to perfect strangers. I tell Lori, I say, Lori, there's a little girl there or a little boy there. Grab that one over there. We try to get them, that aren't too old. And we take them without their parents. I tell their parents, we'll bring them back. Don't worry about that. And we take them to the winner's circle. And it's amazing what has happened. I get letters all the time from some of these kids that are now 20, 21, 22, telling me experience. I was at the Derby last year and a kid walked up, well, it wasn't a kid, about 25-year-old walked up and he said, do you remember me? And I said, no, should I? And he said, when I was 9 years old, you picked me out of the crowd and took me to the winner's circle here at Churchill. And I have that picture. I'm a lawyer now. I'm a graduate lawyer. I have that picture on my wall. And he said, I just wanted to know that it means a lot to me. He said, do you remember what you said to me? And I said, no, what did I tell you? He said, you looked at me and said, don't talk to any strange girls, and remember all girls are strange.
Now, do you do that for the big races as well?
Pardon? I do it every race.
Kentucky Derby.
Well, in the Derby, I can't do that because I got to take them across the track. Now here I take them, but at the Kentucky Derby, it's really difficult to get into the winner's circle of Kentucky Derby. The National Guard's there, and I remember when we won with Winning Colors, and Gene Klein was 6'5", and he's the owner. He's marching across, and his little wife Joyce is about 5 feet. And she's running along, and he goes into the winner's circle, and the National Guards brought that rope across and just clotheslined her. She was on the ground. It's a little tough to get in over there.
Oh my gosh, but that's still a tradition that you continue to this day.
Oh yeah, and I try to get other guys to do it. They don't, I don't know why, they just don't do it.
But it creates fans to this very day.
Yeah, for sure. I get letters all the time, amazing.
That's fantastic. Well, training has started yet again. Wayne,
I got to tell you one cute.
Please.
I got to tell you one other story.
Go.
Right here, I win a race and there was a couple right there on the wall. So I go down and I tap this little girl on the shoulder, and I said, "Come on, we're going to go down and take a picture with this horse." And boy, she's so excited. So we go down. And we take the picture, and I'm coming off, and my phone rings. And I thought, well, I better answer it. I look, and it's Bob Baffert. He says, Wayne, I'm watching on television, and he said, you don't miss a trick, do you? He said, you don't miss a trick. He said, on the day of the inauguration of our first black president, you take a black girl to the winner's circle.
On that note,
That's true, what the hell?
after 3 years of almost daily groveling and begging, this has paid off. Thank you so much for the honor and privilege of sitting down with you, Wayne.
Well, thank you. And this is a special person right here. She does an unbelievable job in Oaklawn in a difficult situation. And when my dear friend Jack Vanberg passed away, who was on her show, she gave the unbelievable tribute at his service. It was really touching. You are special.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Hall of Fame trainer, Wayne Lukas. Thank you so much.